Well, it comes back to the issue I talked about earlier about the importance of content experts, professors, becoming better teachers. The first thing I would do is to change the postgraduate program. If somebody wants to go on to be a university professor, then part of their postgraduate program should include teaching as well as research. Now, that's the ideal. There are all kinds of systemic barriers to that happening, but it's really expensive to take a mid-career professor who's probably better off spending most of their time trying to get research grants and then trying to turn them into a teacher who can use technology for teaching. That's really expensive. You take them out and put them into a course and so on, you're taking them away from their research. But if we get them when they're postgraduates, then it's much cheaper, actually, and much more effective because they're learning about teaching alongside learning how to do research and how to integrate the two together. So the first step for me would be to really change the doctoral programs, particularly. And of course, all the scientists will throw up their hands and say we can't possibly do that and so on, because we want the best researchers and et cetera, et cetera. We don't get the best researchers, students won't come to our university. I understand all that, but would you put a pilot in a plane and not train them? No, you wouldn't. So why do we put teachers in front of a class, professors in front of a class, and not train them how to manage that class? And I don't mean classroom behavior, but how to teach their subject in a really effective way. So that would be the first major change I'd make. The second is we're going through, there's a kind of process that institutions have gone through. We started off with just the professor deciding exactly what they want to do and teaching their course. And the main administration job was to make sure there was a classroom, a space, that the students were organized in groups and could, so we had that. We've got a very, I won't say sophisticated, but a very complex system of managing campus-based learning. We put a lot of money into it. We spend a huge amount of money on buildings, electricity, heating and lighting, etc. Now, let's just think, let's assume that online, fully online, distance learning will continue to grow. It's about 15% of all teaching in Canada at the moment. But let's say that goes up to 25 to 30%. That's 15% less demand on campus spaces, or 15% more students, and for many institutions that means more revenue, either from the government or from tuition fees. And then we have another, let's say a third of the teaching, at a minimum, being done online rather than face-to-face on campus-based teaching. That's going to affect the classrooms. Now, one of the things that people always say is we don't have the money to do online learning. Well, we don't if we spend the money on campus-based facilities all the time. But if we're looking at this new world in which students are spending at least half their time online, even if they're full-time students on a campus, then we need to think about using the resources differently and putting more effort into providing that teaching and learning support for faculty and less into nice new buildings and so on. Now, again, this is not going to happen easily because first of all, government ministers love cutting ribbons and open buildings and saying, look what the government has given you. And secondly, university presidents and rectors really love these spanking new buildings. They can take visitors around and business people and say, look at it, how great we've got. And online learning is somewhere out there which nobody can see very easily unless they go online to look for it. But again, that has its benefits too, because a university that is really, truly online will be everywhere. And businesses will see the stuff. They'll come up on Google all the time. This is what this university is the leader in this thing. So there are some really difficult choices to make here now, and we have so much what I call legacy investment in buildings that we really need to rethink. I'm not saying there's no need for buildings, there is, but if, for instance, in parts of Canada, around, for instance, the Greater Toronto area, the population is expanding in the suburbs, and they are demanding new universities. And I'm saying, well, why would you put a building in a suburb, you know, and everybody has to commute to that, when in fact maybe what you need is to extend an existing university, extend its online activity so students in those suburbs can access the programs from an already existing institution. And those are kind of questions that government should be actually asking themselves. Is this the best way? Now, it's two different budgets. I know all that. You know, it comes from governments borrow money to build buildings, and they put that debt off into the future, so it's not their concern. Whereas teaching is a recurrent expenditure and has to come out of today's budget. But nevertheless, you've got your option. You can cut. It's an economic decision. Do you cut the debt, or do you spend the money in other activities that are more cost-effective, perhaps, than borrowing money to build buildings which may not be needed in the future?